I'm very excited to be with you for the first time in this new year. We're going to continue the series this year with a similar format to last year. We're looking to share within less than 30 minutes the most important labor markets updates to you, and also leave some time for questions in the end. If you have any questions, please feel free to add them to the chat. I will either respond to it at the moment or maybe at the end, where we'll leave some time for the Q&A. I love any questions, so please feel free to add them in. First of all, I'll take you through the agenda for today. A couple of things that I'd like to share with you. We're going to start, as per usual, with the update on what's happening in the global labor markets. What is the current position of the dial between the power dynamics of the employee and the employer? Then we're going to go into what is the impact of the tariffs that have been introduced today in the US and in Mexico and Canada. I've also looked at many different end of year list and starting of the year list and synthesized them all in a short message for you to understand what are the main themes for 2025. And then I have three research pieces that I want to give the spotlight to. First of all, Randstad Enterprise Talent Trends Report, and then Randstad's Work Monitor, and last but not least, Revelio's research that they're doing. Very interesting research that they do at their area, at that company, I mean, and I want to highlight one of the things that we do. And then we finish with the Q&A. So let's dive right away in. First of all, the snapshot of the labor market. As you can see, the dial has changed a little bit for our bellwether countries that we have an eye on. First of all, in the US, the dial has moved back a little bit. That means that the labor market is a little bit less tight. And that was actually not everything was bad in the US. A couple of things have improved. For example, the real wages have grown faster than they did a quarter before. But the most important reason why it went down quite a bit is because the job vacancy rate has gone down. It used to be 4.9% at the end of last year. Right now it is at 4.5%. Just to give you a little bit of an indication, that means that it is still a very tight labor market, but the tightness has reduced a little bit. Overall, the labor market in the US looks very healthy. Unemployment had decreased a little bit. More people are working now than they were before. So overall, a very healthy labor market in the US as of now. In the UK, actually, the labor market got a little bit tighter. All indicators were in green. That means that unemployment has gone down a bit. More people are working. Wages are increasing. The real wages are increasing. And also the 31-month decline in number of open vacancies has stabilized and has actually increased a little bit again. For the Netherlands, a little bit of a mixed bag. Wages are relatively stable, but mostly a little bit less vacancy. So that has moved the dial back a little bit. I hope that gives you a little bit of a feeling of what we see in the labor market. It looks like we are stabilizing compared to a year ago, and there is not necessarily a lot of green shoots in terms of increasing vacancies as of yet. Then a big topic, especially today. Today, the tariffs have gone live for Mexico and for Canada. Obviously, this is a result of Trump's re-election. He has introduced 25% on all goods from Mexico and Canada, and 10% on just energy products from Canada. It is expected that this will have quite a large impact on all the economies involved. Canada could see a decline of 1% of its GDP. Mexico could even go up to -2%. The impact on the American economy in terms of GDP loss is a little bit less, but still there. Obviously, as any economist knows, Tariffs are not good for business. They're not good for the global economy. So there's quite a bit of job loss. There could be almost 300,000 jobs lost in Canada, and in the US, based on just these tariffs, it's expected to 177,000 people are expected to lose their jobs. Now, it doesn't necessarily stop there. Because a lot of companies and countries like Mexico and Canada have already expected to retaliate on certain goods to really play tit for tat, and that is normal in terms of trade war as well. Trump has also announced that he's going to impose tariffs on the EU as well. So further tariffs are already included. And I want to draw your attention to this graph on the left, because what you see there in 2017, that's when Trump had his first period in the office. And from 2021, you can see that he increased the tariffs across the board in the US as well. But what I want to highlight to your attention is that massive uptick that is now in effect, that the tariffs on average are now 7.1% at the level not seen since the 60s. And I also hope that you understand that the trade war in his first term in office was relatively small compared to what we can expect now. So there is expected to be quite some disruption in the labor market in North America, and potentially also in the EU once those tariffs follow. And the job loss in the US could go up to 400,000, and that is basically a 0.5% increase in unemployment that can come from this. Now, the ripple effects could be definitely there as well. Inflation is expected to rise because goods get more expensive, and that could be an overall damper on the economy because of the loss of purchasing power at the consumer side. So definitely one of those topics to watch for this year, and we'll be probably coming back to this topic later on these sessions as well. Then I want to zoom out a little bit on like what is 2025 like expected to be like, and what are the topics that most HR departments are discussing. And I looked at more than 20 lists of end of year and beginning of the year on what is happening, and I've also based the conversations that I had with our clients, this overview of what I see are the major topics in the here and now. First of all, I think no surprise of anybody, technological disruption is expected to have an impact. We often talk about AI, but there is a definite revolution happening in terms of robotics and automation as well. But of course, AI grabs a lot of the attention, and a lot of HR departments are thinking about how do I introduce AI in our day-to-day with our current population of employees, but also in talent acquisition. And there it is not easy to implement this type of AI. And you can see here the stat that 12% have integrated AI in their day-to-day, but marketing, for example, is already a lot further in this perspective. The next thing, this year, we've really seen a lot of our clients talking about the impact of aging populations in multiple ways. Of course, it means that your most experienced part of the workforce is leaving the workforce and needs to be replaced. We see that with manufacturing clients, that there's some of that experience that is really hard to get in the market is leaving the workforce, and they're considering how do we keep engaging more senior talent and more experienced talent with our business to make sure that we have the right knowledge in our organization. But also from a leadership perspective, you see that there's less people under 50 now in the workforce than there are 50 plus in that bracket, and those people are going to retire soon. So is your leadership pipeline strong enough to really account for all the people retiring over the next 10 years? And the third pillar that I see a lot of conversations happening around is the power dynamics between employees and employers. And one of the most important area where you see that is still in the return to office policies, where they are highly unpopular among talent, but a lot of companies are still introducing them, and that has a significant impact on, for example, the talent pool that you're trying to recruit from. If you have a whole country to recruit from, or just the vicinity of one of your offices, that obviously has an impact on the size of your talent pool and potentially the success that you have in recruiting different people. Other areas where we see it, and we've seen it last year, quite a few areas are strikes and other areas of discontent around compensation. The number of strikes in the last few years in most of the developed economies have gone up. And again, that's a clear sign that there is a power struggle between employers and employees. Now, all of this happens at the backdrop of quite some economic uncertainty. I talked about the tariffs just now, but also the geopolitical situation is not necessarily that easy. And that makes it very hard for leaders to actually take the right decisions around that economic uncertainty, but also the impact that AI will have on the shift in skills that you need in a company to be successful. Um, Moving on to the next topic. So, Randstad Enterprise released its key over its talent trends report, in which more than 1,000 HR leaders have been surveyed to see what they see happening in their businesses. And a very interesting read. There are three key themes coming out of that. Again, of course, AI is an important one there, but also how do you include AI in a conversation with your employees, with your future employees through your talent acquisition, but also how do you provide with the right career growth based on AI. There's a lot of new opportunities for people to develop themselves with the use of AI. So how do you include that in your business? Next topic is the pixelation of work. What is meant with that? That means that traditionally we would look at job titles, but you'd see now that most companies start to move to what are the tasks that need to be done. And once we know those tasks, how are we going to organize for that? Are we going to build those tasks internally with the skills of our people? Are we going to borrow those skills? Or are we going to use robots, for example, to take over some of that work, especially with the AI revolution happening? That will be very interesting conversations to have with your organization. And if you flip it to the other side, we're really in a skills first era where people would like to develop themselves, and companies need to foster that learning enthusiasm among their talent. And we see that the desire of learning, and especially around AI, is very high among talent. And that also means that skilling and reskilling will be one of the major topics for talent for this year. If we then look at what are those talent trends, you can see them here on the slide. There's one that I wanted to highlight here, that is the hyperscale, the skills first movement with an internal talent marketplace. I think this is a very interesting topic. We had a conversation with a couple of clients last week, where internal mobility is an area where everybody's very interested, and requires definitely a culture around it, and possibly also some tech to enable that internal mobility opportunities for your company. And I think it's one of those areas where any company can improve, and it will be very cool to have the opportunity in 2025 to actually improve that for your company. Then another piece of research from Randstad that I found very interesting this year was released in January. That's the Work Monitor. That's research that Randstad does for 20 years already. This year, more than 27,000 people were interviewed globally to understand what are their drivers in work. And this year, for the first time, flexibility actually ranked higher than pay. And that is a very interesting conversation to have in your organization, to say, are we actually focusing on very much on pay, or is flexibility also one of those areas that we should have the right conversation with your hiring managers and with your talent to give them a work-life balance that they wish? And what I thought was interesting to highlight here, you can see here this split out by generation, and especially in the Gen Z and generation, you see that the difference between work-life balance being important and pay being important is very profound. And obviously, if you have a lot of managers from either a baby boomer generation or Gen X, where that might not be the same, they might not realizing how important the right work-life balance is to younger generations and needs to be discussed. Um, a couple more things that are in this research and why it's worth to have a look at that is we have an excellent graph as well on what talent wants to see from a remote or hybrid work. And there you can clearly see that 5 days in the office is definitely not the preferred option for talent, whereas a lot of companies are actually requiring people again to be 5 days in the office. So worth a read for you. And then we'll move on to the next one. The next one is from Revelio. Revelio is a talent intelligence company. Lisa Simon and her team do very interesting work on what can we see in from a talent intelligence perspective happening in the market, and they wrote this article that I thought was very interesting to share with you today, and that is around American companies, American headquartered companies, offshoring more and more jobs, and specifically the jobs that are remote friendly are moving faster offshore than other jobs. And you can see in the graph on the left, for many years already, this is an uptick that companies are offshoring more of their work outside of the US. You see a little bit of a stagnation in 2023, but it's picking up again. And this is something that we see with our clients as well, that some of the headquarters work is moved to a global network, basically, and some of the more supply chain or more manufacturing work is moved closer to the headquarters. And that dynamic continues and probably will continue further with the impact of the tariffs. Then you see different industries adopting a more offshore approach quicker than others, especially consulting and IT firms are leveraging offshore talent quite a bit. And then which countries have seen the biggest growth coming out of that? Maybe to little surprise, India is part of that, but also number one was actually Pakistan, where it was growing the fastest. Other countries that are up there in the top five are the Philippines, but also countries like Spain, Brazil, and Germany have also seen significant growth in in workers from American headquartered companies that are expanding to these countries. Now, I think it will be very interesting to realize what the impact is of this trend. What we see in the market is that the competition in especially countries like India is growing quite quickly. It has an impact on the wages there. You'll see wages growing faster. And this is one of the areas that a lot of people often forget, is that they think they offshore to a country with lower wages, but what actually happens next is that your costs increase faster. So you have one time the benefit, but then after that, we see the wages growing faster in these countries. So your costs are actually growing faster than they did before. That's something to be aware of. The other implication I think is interesting to realize is that strategic workforce planning is already a tricky area to do that in the right way. And if you have a global workforce, those location strategies will become more important. Of course, this is one of the talent intelligence topics that we love to discuss. and that dynamic is adding to the complexity of strategic workforce planning. So these were the things that I wanted to highlight today. There are a couple of key takeaways that I think you should take home and have the conversations around. The impact of the tariffs, not only the first iteration, but also the retaliation and what does it mean for your workforce. Where are you gonna, what supply chain changes do you expect, and what does it mean for your people? And like I said, three pillars of conversation that you need to have in your organization, obviously around AI, but don't forget about the aging population, and also around how do you make sure that employees enjoy the work and the flexibility that they are interested in. Then we'll move on to the Q&A, and I've seen some questions coming in, so let me answer them. If the war in Ukraine were to end, how would this impact the world of talent? Would it create further scarcity because people potentially moving back to Ukraine, or would it generate an economic boost? I think that's going to be somewhat mixed. So Ukraine has had quite a blossoming economy during the war when it comes to defense. And I do expect that also post-war, with the investment, especially in Europe, in the defense sector, that will grow quickly. If you see and you look at the research of Ukrainians that have moved abroad and have found a job, they are in most of them would like to stay in the country where they moved to. But in countries like Germany, the Netherlands, areas where a lot of Ukrainians moved, and there will be still a significant portion moving back, that could lead to further talent scarcity in those countries. Next question. Do you think that offshoring of remote jobs can create a similar situation at home that happened with manufacturing offshoring in the last decade? Or the nature of this is different? Well, I think it can in two ways. One is a business continuity. You see that some of the offshoring happens to countries, Pakistan, India, Philippines, that could have an impact on climate change, where power outages could become more prevalent, or even worse, disasters. And that could severely hamper then global operations of a global company. So business continuity should be one of the things that you need to keep in mind. Second, Europe, the conversation in Europe around the tariffs they're saying, well, we maybe manufacture goods and export them more to the US. But if we look at digital services, the US, we pay a lot for digital services that are coming from the US, because most big tech companies are based in the US. So that could be an invention of tariffs on digital services, and then that can have an impact on talent, and talent that has moved abroad as well. So I do think there are risk factors in these areas. However, I do think that the opportunity that most companies still have with wage arbitrages, if you compare California to India, with about an 80% difference in cost, 80% reduction in cost potentially, then that's a huge opportunity for companies to save cost. And not forget that India is a great country that still adds a lot of new talent to the global labor market, highly skilled, highly educated, which is also a massive opportunity compared to some of the countries that face an aging population and severe talent scarcity. Another question, as Gen Z enters the workforce, they're challenging traditional hierarchies, reshaping leadership expectations, and demanding more transparency, flexibility, and inclusivity. How are these shifts influencing decision-making in the workplace, culture, and future leadership? Yeah, I think it's going to be very interesting to see how the millennials will take over from the Gen X's in terms of management skills. You do now see that D&I is taking a little bit of a drop back, or how do you say that, a step back especially in the US, where I think, and you might have seen the messaging from Randstad over the last few weeks, that could be a problem for a lot of companies because D&I policies should really help you to open up talent pools that you weren't able to access before. If you're battling with talent scarcity, D&I should be part of that toolkit to make sure that you have access to talent. And from a lot of research, we know that diverse companies are performing better than non-diverse companies. So it's good business practice to continue with that. Obviously, the political climate in the US is slightly different right now, but I do expect that the newer generations will have a more open mind when it comes to diversity in the workforce, and that they will start to demand that as well, and open that up in their management styles. So I'm very interested to see how that changes the dynamics within companies. The more and more we see millennial and potential Gen Z people or generation become leaders in their own companies as well. I think that was the questions for today. If there are no more questions coming in, I would like to thank you a lot for today's session. I hope you found it interesting. If you have any questions popping up afterwards, I'm very interested to hear that. Please reach out. And otherwise, I hope to see you on the next session on May the 8th. Hope to see you all then, and thank you very much.